I have a quick story that I would like to share. When I was really young, around 9 or 10 years old, I lived in Chicago and was blessed enough to listen to some really good radio stations. My family was really into music, so the radio played every day in our house. I listened to a station that was called wvon, and I remember the personalities, the DJs that they had. They had these either great names or great nicknames going on. So we had Herb Kent, the cool gent. He would really play good music, and he was rather established on the station. Then we also had DJs like Bill Butterball Crane. We had Purvis Spann, the blues man. We had E. Rodney Jones, and I remember they had a guy named Richard McGee, and they would have a child's voice whenever he said his name that would follow his name and say, Richard McGee, you got a funny name. So those are the type of things that give you those type of memories just based off of their names alone. They did have women, but I remember the women doing more or less like community news because they had a lady whose name was Isabel Joseph Johnson, and they had another lady by the name of Bernadine C. Washington. And as I listened to this station, every night before I would go to sleep, and this was around 10 p.m., the radio station would be going off the air, and they would do a setup where Herb Kent would, at first, he would play a gospel song that was called Open Our Eyes. And even to this day, I remember that song. That was a really soothing song, kind of beautiful gospel song that played every night. I still remember that song. Then, after that, the radio station would play Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream speech. And when the speech was over, the radio station would go off and you would more than likely hear static on the air from that. So I got used to going to sleep off of the radio. When I got somewhat older, I ended up listening to a radio station that was called WJPC. The JPC stood for Johnson Publication Company. At that time, the Johnson family, headed up by John Johnson, they sold a lot of the black hair care products. If you ever watched old episodes of Soul Train, you saw those hair care products as commercials. The Johnson Publication family also were the ones that had Ebony Magazine, Jet Magazine, Essence, and so on from that. So in the 70s, the middle 70s, I believe it was, they started a radio station called WJPC. This is when I first caught wind of a DJ by the name of Tom Joyner. And my mom had bought me an AM only radio, and it had a timer on it. You can set it for an hour or whatever it is. And I would sit up every night nodding off, listening to music that's being played until I fell asleep to the music. And it'll shut off on its own. Then, being an alarm clock, I would wake up to music. So, if anybody that recognizes and know me, now you can see from a start where I got my love of music from, just by doing these type of things and listening to music on a constant. Now, I don't want y'all laughing at me when I say this here, but I'm going to tell y'all this story. This is at the time when I told my mom, I said, Mom, I need another radio. She says, what's wrong with the one you got? I said, I need one that has FM on it. She said, don't the one you have already have it? I said, nah, that's AM only. She said, well, why you need an FM radio? I said, because Tom Joyner is not on WJPC anymore. He's over on FM on WGCI, and I want to wake up to Tom Joyner in the morning. My mom looked at me like I was crazy, but being a spoiled kid that I was, she got me an FM radio. The story continues, and I listen to Tom Joyner in the morning from WGCI, and the rest of that story is history. But to go on about the DJs that I was speaking about, this also gave me introduction to a lady DJ by the name of LaDonna Tittle. LaDonna Tittle went by Tittle in the Middle, and it was really because she was an afternoon DJ. She was in the middle of the morning DJ to the drive at home DJ, so she called herself Tittle in the Middle. So I really remember her. I also remember they had a lady by the name of Janice Gordon, and her moniker was Janice Gorgeous Gordon. So remember her. I remember Richard Steele, and Richard Steele ended up being a huge DJ in Chicago as well. So those around the time when I was in my teenage years, when I got a little bit older into my teens, music kind of changed. We had rap music and what's later on to be described as hip-hop type music, and the DJs got younger. And what happened was, on Fridays and Saturdays, especially at night, they would do what's known as mixing. The DJs would play a song. It could be the hit song that's out right now, and they would loop it into other songs without any break or whatever. If you was at a dance party, the party would never have to stop. And be honest, this was a good time in music for that, especially in Chicago. I don't know about other places. I'm sure Detroit, Philly, and places like that had the same type of thing going on. But we were listening to the mixing DJs, and they were like Marco Spoon, Rafi Rosario, Kenny Jam, and Jason. I remember them just off the top of my head as much as I listened to them and jammed off of their sets. Just some really good music. When time for me moved on some, I want to say it was because of TV stations, cable, doing music videos. I do believe that really killed the radio DJ era. I think it became more of a visual thing with the music videos, but I still have that ingrained in me of what I used to listen to. And something triggered me the other day and made me think of that song, Open Our Eyes, which made me think of Herb Kent, which made me think of wvon. So I just wanted to share that little bit with you and make this a quick one and see how many of my older listeners can remember the same people that I was talking about, or maybe add in a couple more people that I forgot to say. So I'm going to go ahead and close this out right now, and I'm going to say bye-bye and take care.